The space station called Meridian's Rest floated in the darkness between stars. It was a massive thing, home to thousands of beings from dozens of worlds. Ships came and went at all hours, carrying goods and travelers from every corner of the galaxy. Humans had only arrived in this part of space a few decades ago, and most aliens still looked at them as newcomers. Weak, fragile, not worth much attention. Pushed her cargo cart through the crowded market district, keeping one eye on the goods she was delivering and one eye on her daughter. Was 7 years old, with curious eyes and a habit of wandering off whenever something caught her attention. Today, the market was especially busy. Traders shouted prices in a dozen languages. Strange smells filled the air. Lights flashed from vendor stalls selling everything from alien fruits to recycled ship parts. "Stay close," called out. "I am close," Mama answered, but her eyes were already fixed on something in the distance. A tall alien was walking through the crowd, and his skin was covered in what looked like glowing patterns. Had never seen anything like it. She took a step toward him, then another. The crowd shifted, and suddenly her mother was gone from view. Didn't panic. She was a station kid, born and raised in the recycled air of Meridian's Rest. She knew how to find her way around. She turned to walk back toward where she had last seen her mother, but a massive body blocked her path. The alien standing before her was nothing like the glowing one she had been watching. This one was huge, 8 feet tall with thick skin that looked like armor. His eyes were small and red, sunk deep into his skull. He wore expensive clothes, and in his hand he held a ceremonial cup filled with dark liquid. Recognized the species from her mother's warnings. A dangerous, proud, easy to offend. Tried to step around him, but her foot caught on something and she stumbled forward. Her small body crashed into this leg, and the cup flew from his hand. The dark liquid splashed across his chest and onto the ground. Everything went quiet. The looked down at the stain spreading across his fine clothes. Then he looked at the small human child standing before him, his red eyes filled with rage. "You dare," he growled. His voice was deep and terrible. "You dare insult me." Could not move. Her legs had turned to stone. She wanted to run, wanted to scream for her mother, but nothing would come out. The raised his massive hand. His claws were as long as fingers, sharp as knives. The crowd around them stepped back. No one moved to help. No one spoke. The hand came down, but it never reached her. Something crashed into, pushing her aside. She fell to the ground and looked up just in time to see a human man standing where she had been. This blow struck him across the chest with a sound like breaking wood. The man flew backward, smashing through a vendor's stall. Goods scattered everywhere. He hit the ground hard and did not move. The crowd gasped, then laughed. "Humans," he said, "so easy to break." Heard the crash from across the market. She knew somehow that it involved her daughter. She abandoned her cart and ran, pushing through the crowd with strength she did not know she had. When she reached the scene, her heart nearly stopped. Was on the ground, crying but unhurt. A few feet away, a human man lay in the wreckage of a destroyed stall. His arm was bent at a wrong angle. Blood dripped from his mouth. His uniform marked him as station security, though he was clearly off duty. And standing over them both was his claws still extended, his eyes filled with cruel amusement. Ran to and pulled her close. "Baby, are you okay? Are you hurt?" "The man saved me," Mama sobbed. "He jumped in front of me." Looked at the fallen man. She recognized him now. Cole. She had seen him around the station, always quiet, always alone. He worked security but kept to himself. Never caused trouble, never asked for anything. And now he was broken on the ground because he had thrown himself between a monster and her child. Groaned. His eyes opened, unfocused at first, then sharpening with pain. He coughed and more blood came up. But then, slowly, impossibly, he began to move. The crowd fell silent again. Planted his good hand on the ground. He pushed himself up to one knee. His breathing was ragged, wet, wrong. Something was badly damaged inside him. But he did not stop. He rose to his feet, swaying, and turned to face the. He said nothing. He simply stood there, placing his broken body between the alien and the child, refusing to move. The laughter died in his throat. He stared at the human with something new in his red eyes. Not respect, not yet, but perhaps confusion, perhaps the first seed of doubt. "You cannot win," the said. "You are nothing." Did not answer. He did not need to. His answer was his presence. His answer was the blood on his lips and the steel in his eyes. His answer was the simple fact that he was still standing. The raised his claws again. This time he would not hold back. This time he would kill. But before he could strike, armored figures pushed through the crowd. Station security. 6 of them, weapons drawn, forming a line between thee and the humans. "That's enough," the lead officer shouted. "This is neutral territory. Stand down." The looked at the officers. He looked at the humans they were protecting. His lips curled in disgust. "This is not over," he said. "The human interfered with cultural discipline. There will be consequences." He turned and walked away, the crowd parting before him like water before a ship. The moment he was gone, collapsed, caught him before he hit the ground, struggling under his weight, grabbed his hand, her small fingers wrapping around his bloody ones. "Stay awake," begged. "Help is coming, just stay awake." Looked at her. His eyes were going dim, but she saw something in them, a question. "She's okay," said. "My daughter is okay because of you." Smiled. It was a small thing, painful and brief, but it was real. Then his eyes closed, and the medics arrived, and everything became chaos. But would remember that smile. She would remember this man who had given everything for a child he did not know, and she would make sure the universe remembered too. The medical bay on Meridian's Rest was cold and white. Machines hummed and beeped, doing their quiet work of keeping people alive. Sat in a hard plastic chair outside the treatment room, holding on her lap. The little girl had finally stopped crying, but she had not let go of her mother since they arrived. 3 hours had passed since the incident in the market. 3 hours of waiting, of watching doctors and nurses rush in and out of Cole's room, of not knowing if the man who had saved her daughter would live or die. Finally, a doctor emerged. She was one of the reptilian species that ran most of the station's medical services. Her scales were a dull green, and her eyes held the tired look of someone who had seen too much suffering. "He will survive," the doctor said, "but the damage is severe. Broken collarbone, 4 fractured ribs, internal bleeding. One of his lungs was punctured. We have repaired what we can, but humans heal slowly. He will be in recovery for many weeks, perhaps months." Let out a breath she did not know she had been holding. "Can I see him?" The doctor nodded. "He is awake but weak. Do not stay long." Carried into the room. Lay on the medical bed, tubes and wires connecting him to various machines. His chest was wrapped in bandages, and his left arm was held in a metal brace. His face was pale, but his eyes were open. "Hey," he said. His voice was rough, barely more than a whisper. "Hey yourself," replied. She sat down and moved to stand beside the bed. "How do you feel?" "Like I got hit by a..." He tried to smile, but it turned into a wince. Walked up to the bed and looked at with wide eyes. "Thank you for saving me," she said. "I'm sorry you got hurt." Looked at the child. Something softened in his face. "It's okay, kid. I've had worse." Doubted that, but she did not say so. Instead, she said, "The doctors told me you have no family listed, no emergency contact. Is there anyone I should call? Anyone who should know you're here?" Shook his head. "No, there's no one." The words hung in the air, heavy with loneliness. Felt her heart tighten. This man had nearly died for her daughter, and there was no one in the galaxy who would have missed him. "Why did you do it?" she asked. "You didn't know us. You didn't owe us anything. Why did you jump in front of that monster?" Was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was distant, like he was looking at something far away. I saw a kid in danger. I didn't think, I just moved. He paused. Anyone would have done the same. No, said firmly. They wouldn't have. I was there. I saw the crowd. Dozens of beings and not one of them lifted a finger. You were the only one who moved. Had no answer for that. He simply closed his eyes and let out a slow breath. Stayed with him until he fell asleep, then took home. But her mind would not rest. Something was building inside her, a feeling she could not name, not just gratitude, something bigger, something that demanded action. The next day, she returned to the medical bay and found awake but troubled. What's wrong? She asked. The filed a complaint, said. Against me. They're saying I interfered with something called cultural discipline. The station council is considering sanctions. Stared at him. Sanctions against you. You nearly died protecting a child. Doesn't matter, they have standing here. Humans don't. Not really. His voice was bitter. Their ambassador is pushing for my expulsion from the station. Says I owe them some kind of payment for the insult. That's insane. That's galactic politics. We're new here. We don't have the same rights as the elder species. We don't have the same protections. Felt anger building in her chest, hot and fierce. She had lived with this reality her whole life, the quiet truth that humans were second-class citizens in the galaxy. But she had never felt it so sharply as she did now, looking at the broken man who had sacrificed everything for her daughter. That night after was asleep, sat at her small computer terminal and began to research. She read through galactic law, searching for anything that might help. Most of it was dense and confusing, written by species who had been building civilizations when humans were still living in caves. But she kept reading, kept searching, driven by something she could not explain. It was nearly morning when she found it. The right of assertion. It was an ancient law, older than most of the species currently using it. The text was formal and complicated, but the core idea was simple. If someone saved the life of a member of your family, you could formally claim them as kin. You could declare them part of your house, your lineage, your blood. And once claimed, they would have the same standing as any other family member. The same protections, the same rights. It was a law designed for the elder species, for beings with ancient lineages and powerful houses. Was a cargo hauler with a rented apartment and a daughter she was barely able to feed. She had no house. She had no lineage. But the law did not specify species. Read the text again and again, looking for loopholes, for exceptions, for anything that would make this impossible. She found nothing. The law was clear. Any being could invoke it as long as the conditions were met. And the conditions had been met. Cole had placed his body between her daughter and death. He had absorbed a blow meant to kill. He had bled for her family. His hands were shaking as she opened a new document and began to type. I hereby request a formal hearing before the Station Council of Meridian's Rest. I wish to invoke the right of assertion, as documented in Galactic Code Section 742, to claim Cole as kin to my house and lineage. She stared at the words. They seemed impossible, ridiculous. A human cargo hauler invoking ancient laws meant for empires. But she thought of, lying broken in that medical bed with no one to visit him. She thought of, sleeping safely in the next room because a stranger had chosen to die for her. She pressed send. Whatever came next, she would face it, for her daughter, for the man who had saved her, and for every human who had ever been told they did not matter. The galaxy was about to learn that they did. The council chamber of Meridian's Rest was designed to make visitors feel small. The ceiling rose 50 feet above the floor, covered in carvings that told the history of galactic civilization. The walls were lined with statues of the elder species, their stone eyes looking down with cold judgment. The council itself sat on a raised platform, 7 beings from 7 different worlds, each one representing thousands of years of power and tradition. Walked into this chamber with her daughter's hand in hers, and her heart pounding in her chest. She had dressed in the best clothes she owned, which were not very good. Her hair was pulled back in a simple style. She had no jewelry, no symbols of rank or wealth. She was exactly what she appeared to be, a working mother from a young species, standing in a room built by giants. The chamber was not empty. Word had spread about her request, and dozens of beings had come to watch. Most of them were aliens, their faces showing various degrees of curiosity and amusement. A few humans stood in the back, their expressions nervous but hopeful. At the center of the raised platform sat an ancient with scales the color of old silver. She was the chief arbiter, responsible for matters of law and tradition. Her eyes were sharp despite her age, and they fixed on the moment she entered. To the right of the council sat Ambassador, the representative. He was smaller than the enforcer who had attacked, but his eyes held the same cruel light. He looked at the way one might look at an insect. Said, her voice echoed through the chamber. "You have requested this hearing to invoke the right of assertion. Do you understand what this means?" Nodded, "I do." "And you understand that this right has not been invoked by a human in the history of this station. That many here believe your species lacks the standing to claim such ancient traditions." "I understand that many believe it," said. "I do not agree with them." A murmur ran through the crowd. Ambassador laughed openly. "This is absurd," he said. "A human cargo hauler playing at laws she cannot comprehend. She has no lineage. She has no house. She has nothing but desperation and ignorance." "I have the law," replied. Her voice was steady, though her hands were shaking. Section 742 of the Galactic Code states that any being may invoke the right of assertion if another has saved the life of their kin through direct physical sacrifice. It does not specify species. It does not require wealth or title. It only requires proof. She pulled a data device from her pocket and held it up. "I have that proof. Station security footage from the market district, recorded 3 days ago. It shows my daughter accidentally spilling a drink on the enforcer known as. It shows raising his hand to strike her. And it shows Cole, a human security officer, throwing himself between them and taking the blow that was meant to kill my child." She activated the device. The footage played on the chamber's main screen, larger than life. Every being in the room watched as Dove in front of the massive clawed hand. They watched him fly through the air and crash to the ground. They watched him rise again, broken and bleeding, and stand between the alien and the child. When the footage ended, the chamber was silent. Cole suffered a shattered collarbone, 4 fractured ribs, a punctured lung, and internal bleeding, continued. He nearly died. He would have died if he had taken even one more blow, and he knew that. He knew it when he stood up. He knew it when he refused to move. She looked directly at Ambassador. "He placed his body between my daughter and death. By your own laws, your ancient laws, the laws you claim humans are too primitive to understand, I have the right to claim him. I have the right to assert him as kin." His face twisted with contempt. "Kin to what? You have no house, you have no lineage, you are nothing." Felt something shift inside her. The fear that had been gripping her heart loosened its hold. In its place came something else. Something older. Something that had been passed down through generations of humans who had faced impossible odds and refused to break. "My lineage is human," she said. Her voice filled the chamber now, strong and clear. "We are 60,000 years of survival. We walked out of ice ages that froze the world. We survived plagues that killed more than half of us. We rebuilt after wars that burned our cities to ash. Every human alive carries that legacy. Every human alive is part of that house." She took a step forward. "You think we are young? We are. You think we are weak? Perhaps, but we are here. We are standing in your chamber, invoking your laws, demanding our rights. Because that is what humans do. We survive, we adapt, we learn, and we never ever abandon our own." The silence that followed was absolute, even had nothing to say. Leaned forward, her ancient eyes studying with new interest. You speak well, but speaking is not the same as having standing. The council must deliberate on whether your species can truly invoke this right. The law does not say otherwise, replied. And if you rule against me, you will have to explain why. You will have to put into official record that humans are not beings under galactic law, that we do not have the same rights as others, that saving a child's life means nothing if the wrong species does it. She paused, letting the words sink in. Is that the precedent you wish to set? Is that the message you wish to send to every human in the galaxy? The council members looked at each other, could see the calculations happening behind their eyes. This was politics now, not just law, and politics was something humans understood very well. We will recess to deliberate, announced. The chamber will reconvene in 1 hour. The beings in the room began to move and speak, their voices rising in dozens of conversations, but stood still, holding his hand, waiting. She had done everything she could. She had spoken every word she had. Now the future was in the hands of beings who had never seen her as an equal. But something had changed in the room. She could feel it. The way some of the council members looked at her now. The way the humans in the back stood a little taller. She had thrown a stone into the water. Now she would wait to see how far the ripples spread. The hour felt like a year. Sat in the waiting area outside the council chamber, asleep against her shoulder. Humans and aliens alike passed by, some offering words of support, others simply staring. The news of her assertion had spread across the station like fire. Everyone had an opinion. Everyone was watching. When the doors finally opened and a guard called her back inside, his legs felt weak. She carried in, not wanting to wake her, and stood before the council once more. Looked down at her with an expression could not read. The ancient said, "The council has reached a decision." The chamber fell silent. Even the air seemed to stop moving. The right of assertion is one of the oldest laws in our code. It was written in a time before most of the species in this room existed. Its purpose was simple: to honor sacrifice, to recognize those who put the lives of others before their own, and to give them the protection of family. Paused. The law does not specify species. It does not require wealth or title. It only requires proof of sacrifice, and you have provided that proof. Felt her heart stop. Therefore, this council rules in your favor. Cole is hereby recognized as kin to under galactic law. Any legal actions pending against him are. Any future actions against him will be treated as actions against your declared lineage. For a moment could not move. Then the words sank in and tears began to roll down her cheeks. She had won. Against all odds, against all expectations, she had won. The humans in the back of the chamber erupted in cheers. Even some of the aliens seemed impressed, but Ambassador's face had turned dark with fury. "This is a mistake," he snarled, rising from his seat. "You grant standing to creatures who do not understand honor, who cannot comprehend the traditions they claim to invoke. This human has made a mockery of your laws." "The human has used our laws exactly as they were written," replied calmly. "Perhaps if we did not wish them to be used this way, we should not have written them this way." His eyes burned with hatred. He turned to face directly. "This changes nothing," was insulted. "That insult demands payment, if not from your so-called kinsman, then from you, from your child, from every human on the station." The threat hung in the air, cold and clear. "You would threaten an asserted kinsman?" asked. Her voice had grown sharp. "You would declare blood feud against a house that has been recognized by this council?" "I would remind everyone that humans are prey," spat. "They break easily, they die easily, and no amount of legal games will change that." He turned and stormed out of the chamber, his robes flowing behind him like shadows. The celebration died. The humans who had been cheering fell silent. They all understood what had just happened, had made a public threat. Under culture, that was as good as a promise. Someone was going to get hurt. Went straight to the medical bay. Was sitting up in bed when she arrived, looking stronger than before but still pale. "I heard," he said. "Word travels fast on this station." "We won," said. "You're protected now, your family." Shook his head slowly. "And just promised to come after all of us. I've made things worse. You saved my daughter's life. And now your family is in danger because of it." He looked at her with tired eyes. "You should take and leave. Get on a ship, go somewhere far from here. I'll stay and deal with whatever comes." "No." The word came out harder than intended, looked surprised. "You don't get to decide that," said. "You made your choice when you jumped in front of my daughter. You decided that her life was worth more than yours. Now I'm making my choice. I'm deciding that you're worth fighting for." "Okay." "No, you're part of my family now. That's what the law says. That's what I said. And I don't abandon family." Stared at her for a long moment. Then he closed his eyes and let out a breath that seemed to carry years of loneliness with it. "Okay," he said quietly. "Okay." That night stayed home with Anne, who had been released from the medical bay against doctor's orders. They ate a simple meal together, not talking much, just being present. It almost felt normal. But the normal did not last. Near midnight, his communicator buzzed with an alert. Security cameras had spotted moving through the station's corridors. He was heading toward the human residential sector. He was heading toward them. "He's coming," said. Stood up, wincing as his ribs protested. "Get somewhere safe. I'll." "You'll what? Fight him? You can barely stand." "I'll do what I have to." But before either of them could move, another alert came through, then another, and another. Looked at her communicator in confusion. The alerts were not warnings. They were messages, dozens of them, hundreds. She opened the first one. "Heard what happened at the council. We're on our way." The second one said, "You're not alone, coming now." The third, "Nobody threatens our people. Nobody." Ran to the window and looked down at the corridor below. What she saw made her breath catch in her throat. Humans were gathering, not just a few, hundreds of them. Dock workers in their heavy boots, traders in their worn clothes, off-duty soldiers in their plain jackets, parents carrying sleeping children having left them with neighbors just to be here, old men and young women, strangers who had never met each other, brought together by a single truth. One of their own was in danger, and they would not let him face it alone. They moved through the corridors in silence, converging on the human residential sector from every direction. By the time arrived, they were waiting for him. 200 humans, standing in the corridor outside Cole's quarters. No weapons raised, no threats spoken, just people standing together, refusing to move. Stopped, his red eyes moved across the crowd, counting, calculating. He was a killer, bred for violence, afraid of nothing. But he had never seen anything like this. "Move," he growled. No one moved. "I will kill you all." A dock worker at the front of the crowd, a big man with hands, answered him. "Maybe, but you'll have to go through all of us first, and there's always more of us. There's always more." Stood there for a long moment. The corridor was silent except for the hum of the station systems. 200 pairs of human eyes stared back at him, steady and unafraid. For the first time in his life, hesitated. And somewhere in the back of the crowd, held her daughter close and watched as her people showed the galaxy what humans were truly made of. The standoff lasted through the night. Stood at one end of the corridor, massive and deadly, his claws flexing with the need to kill. 200 humans stood at the other end, blocking the way to Cole's quarters. Neither side moved. Neither side spoke. As the station's artificial dawn began to brighten the lights, a message arrived on his communicator. He read it, and something changed in his red eyes. The killing rage faded, replaced by something colder, something like calculation. Without a word, he turned and walked away. The humans watched him go in silence. They waited until he had disappeared around the corner, until the sound of his heavy footsteps had faded to nothing. Then, finally, someone laughed. Someone else cheered. And suddenly the corridor was full of noise and movement, people embracing strangers, shaking hands, slapping backs. They had won not through violence, not through power, simply by standing together. Pushed through the crowd to find. He was standing in his doorway, leaning against the frame because he was too weak to stand on his own. His eyes were wet. "I didn't ask for this," he said. "You didn't have to," replied. "That's how family works." The news spread across the station within hours. They had backed down. Their enforcer had turned and walked away from a crowd of unarmed humans. No one could quite believe it. 3 days later, the ambassador released an official statement. The syndicate was withdrawing its complaint against Cole, was being reassigned to a different sector. The matter, the statement said, was closed. No one believed the official reasons. Everyone knew the truth. They had calculated the cost of fighting humans who protected each other, and they had decided it was too high. But the story did not end there. A week after the standoff, requested a private meeting with. They met in a small room overlooking the stars, just the two of them. The ancient studied for a long moment before speaking. "I have lived for 400 years, said. "I have seen empires rise and fall. I have watched species that once ruled the galaxy fade into nothing. In all that time, I have learned that the future belongs not to the strongest, but to those who can adapt." She paused, her silver scales catching the starlight. "I thought I understood your species. You are young. Your lives are brief. Your bodies are fragile. By every measure that matters, you should be insignificant." "Should be?" asked. "Should be," agreed. "But I watched what happened in that corridor. I watched 200 beings who had nothing to gain and everything to lose stand in the way of death for a man most of them had never met. I have been asking myself why. Because he's one of us." "Yes, that is what your people keep saying. But what does it mean? They have strong family bonds, but they would not die for a stranger. They honor our ancestors, but we do not claim every member of our species as kin. Only humans seem to do this. Only humans see a stranger in danger and say, 'That is my brother. That is my sister. That is my family.'" Leaned forward, her ancient eyes sharp. "There is a word in the old texts. It refers to species that form bonds beyond blood, beyond reason, beyond survival itself. Species that cannot be broken because they are never truly alone. We have not seen such a species in a very long time." "What happened to the last one?" asked. "They became inconvenient to remember." His voice was flat. "Their name was erased from our histories. Their achievements were credited to others. They were handled." A chill ran down spine. "Is that a warning?" "It is information. What you do with it is your choice." Stood. "But I will tell you this. The galaxy is watching your species now. What happened on this station will be discussed in councils across 100 worlds. Some will see you as a threat. Others will see you as an opportunity. All of them will be trying to decide what humans truly are." She walked to the door, then paused. "Show them wisely." In the weeks that followed, life on the station slowly returned to normal, but not everything was the same. Recovered from his injuries, though the doctors said he would never be quite as strong as before. He resigned from station security and took a new position as officially recognized kinsman. It was mostly ceremonial, but it gave him standing in galactic courts. More importantly, it gave him a place to belong. Called him uncle now. Every time she said it, he looked uncomfortable and secretly pleased. He had never been an uncle before. He had never been family to anyone. Other changes spread beyond the station. Word of the assertion reached human communities across the galaxy. The right of assertion, once an obscure tradition, became a topic of intense discussion. Humans began studying galactic law in earnest, looking for other forgotten rights they could claim. Some were found: debt bonds, protection claims, trade standing provisions. One by one, humans began using the galaxy's own laws to build networks of mutual support and defense. What had started as one woman's desperate gamble was becoming something larger, something the elder species had not anticipated. Ambassador sent a private message to his superiors. It was short. Reassessment required. The humans are not prey. They are pack hunters, and they have just discovered that our own laws protect the pack. The message was classified, but somehow a copy found its way to the human communities. They printed it on shirts. They painted it on walls. They made it their battle cry. We are pack hunters, and the pack protects its own. On the night before was scheduled to move into the spare room of his apartment. The three of them shared dinner together. It was nothing special. Reconstituted protein, recycled water, some vegetables grown in the station's hydroponic gardens. But they sat around the small table like a real family, talking about small things, laughing at jokes, enjoying the simple pleasure of being together. I still don't understand why you did all this, said. The hearing, the assertion, everything. You didn't owe me anything. Smiled, you jumped in front of her for my daughter. You didn't owe her anything either. That's different. Is it? Had no answer. He looked down at his plate, then at. Thank you, he said quietly, for not letting me be alone. You're not alone anymore, replied. You're stuck with us now. I can live with that. Who had been watching this exchange with the sharp attention of a 7-year-old, spoke up. Uncle, now that you're family, does that mean you'll be here for my birthday? I'll be here for every birthday, said, if your mom doesn't get sick of me first. I'll get sick of you eventually, said, but you're still invited. They all laughed. It was a small sound, insignificant against the vastness of space, but it was real and it was theirs. Outside the window, the stars burned in the darkness. The galaxy was ancient and cold and full of dangers. Species rose and fell. Empires crumbled to dust. Nothing lasted forever. But in this small apartment, on this station floating between worlds, something new was growing. A family built from choice. A bond forged in blood and fire. A statement to the universe that humans were more than they appeared. Looked at her daughter, at her strange new brother, at the stars that had once seemed so distant and uncaring. We are here, she thought. We are together, and we will not be forgotten. The galaxy had been warned. The humans were no longer alone. They had found each other and they would never let go. And somewhere, in the dark spaces between the stars, the ancient powers began to watch with new interest. The pack was growing, and the hunt was just beginning.